Chapter 3. Friday, October 10, 1913.
Were we to impress you to write on matters, which to us are of everyday concern, you would perhaps be able to compare them with your own daily life, and you would see then that we, and you, are both at school, and that the school is a very large one, with many classes, and many instructors, but with one scheme running throughout the course of instruction, and that scheme, a unity of progress from the simple to the complex, and that complexity does not mean perplexity. For, as we learn more of the wisdom of the divine author of all, we see how beautifully composite is the realm in which he exerts his loving will, to the end we may, by our very joy of knowledge, give homage to the glory of him, who holds all things in the hollow of his hand. And so, dear lad, we will once again take up our theme, and tell you of our doings here in these bright realms, and of how the Father's love encompasses us all around as a radiant cloud in which all things appear to us more plainly as we progress in humility and in love. One of those things which matter here is that due proportion be meted out between wisdom and love. These are not contrary, the one from the other, but are two great phases of one great principle. For love is to wisdom, as the tree is to the leaves, and if love actuate and wisdom breathe, then the fruit is healthy and sound. By way of illustrating this, we will give you a concrete instance of how we are taught to consider duly, both love and wisdom, in our dealings with ourselves and others, to whom we are permitted to minister. We were given a task to perform a short time ago in which a party of us, to the number of 5, were to go to a colony in a rather distant part of this land, and inquire of them by what means could best be given help to those on earth who were in doubt and perplexity as to God's love. For we were often hampered by our lack of experience in dealing with such cases, and these cases, as you know, are many. The principal of the college was a man who in earth life had been a statesman of no little ability, but his fame was not so great, and it was only when he came over here that he found play for his powers, and understood that the earth is not the only field in which earth's training may be put to use and effect in the kingdom of God. We stated to him the object of our mission, and he was very courteous and kind, for all his high office. I suppose you would call him a great angel, and indeed, if he could come to earth and assume visibility, his brightness would be somewhat awe-inspiring. He is very beautiful, both of form and countenance, radiant and beaming and glowing would perhaps describe him best. He listened and encouraged us, now and then, with a quiet word, to state our difficulties, and we forgot that he was so high in estate, and talked without fear or restraint. And then he said, "Well, my dear pupils, for so you are good enough to become for a little time, what you have told me is very interesting, and also very general in the work in which you are now engaged. Now, if I were to solve your perplexities, you would go back to your work with light hearts, but you would probably find that the solution, when it came to work out, would not be without many flaws in the working, for just those points which are most necessary to remember are those little things which can best be learned by experience, and experience is the only thing which can show you how great these little things are. Come, therefore, with me, and I will teach you what is necessary for you to learn in a better way." So we went with him, and he led us into the grounds which surrounded his house, and there we found there were gardeners at work tending the flowers and fruit trees, and doing the general work of a garden. He took us some distance along the walks, winding here and there, and through plantations of trees and shrubs, where birds were singing and small pretty furry animals played here and there. At length we came to a stream and by it stood a stone arbor, which reminded me of a miniature temple of Egypt, and led us within. Then we sat on a seat under a network of flowering plants of different colors, and he sat on another bench at right angles to us. Drawn on the floor, in indented lines, was a plan, and he pointed to it and said, "Now, this is a plan of my house and these grounds through which I have led you. Here is marked this little place in which we sit. We have come, as you will see, a considerable distance from the gate where I met you, and you were all talking so much of the pretty things you saw as you came that not one of you gave heed to the direction in which you came. It will be good practice, therefore, and not altogether lacking in pleasure, for you to find your way back again to me, and, when you arrive, I shall perhaps be able to give you some help by way of instruction on the difficulties you have stated to me." With that he left us, and we all looked at one another, and then burst out laughing at ourselves for being so foolish as not to guess his object in leading us to this place by so circuitous a route. We then examined the plan again and again, but it was all lines and triangles and squares and circles, and we could make little of it at first. Gradually, however, we began to understand. It was a map of the estate, and the arbor was in the center, or nearly so, but the entrance was not shown, and, as there were 4 paths leading up to it, we did not know which to take to get back again. We, however, reasoned that it did not matter much, for all seemed to lead to the outer circle, because there were so many paths between us and that, which crossed and recrossed each other. I must not tell you of all our endeavors to solve the problem, as it would take much too long. At last I had a thought which I considered, and then, thinking it might perhaps help, told the others. They said it was the very thing they had been waiting for, and would very likely prove the key to the riddle. It was nothing more wonderful than just to go out and take whatever path led in the most direct line onwards from any we were forced to leave. That is awkward. What I mean is this, to go by those paths which would lead us in the straightest line from the arbor in any direction whatever. Then, when we had reached the boundary, which we saw by the plan was a perfect circle, we could skirt that and must inevitably reach the gate sooner or later. So we set off, and a long and very pleasant journey it was, and not without adventure, for the place was extensive, with hills and valleys and woods and streams, and all so beautiful that we had to keep our object very firmly before our minds or we should have forgotten to choose the correct path when we came to 2 ways. We reached the outermost boundary, however, although we did not, I think, take quite the best and most direct route. This boundary, I may say in passing, was composed of a wide stretch of grassland, and we saw, by the shape of its border, that it was circular, although we could not see much of it. So we turned to the left and then, as we went on, the bend of the circular estate seemed endless. Still we followed it and eventually came to the gate where first we had met our instructor. He greeted us encouragingly, and we went up onto a terrace before the house, and then told him all our adventures, much more than I have narrated to you, and he listened as before, and then said, "Well, you have not done so badly, for you have gained your object, you have returned to the gate. And now let me tell you the lesson you have learned. First of all, the thing is to make sure of the direction you wish to go, and then the next thing is to take, not the path which seems shortest, but the one which seems surest to lead you right in the end. That path will not always be the quickest, and may lead you to the borderland where infinity shades off from the realm you know. Still, beyond the borderline you are the better able to see both the extent and also the limitation of the estate you are negotiating, and it is only a matter of steadfastness and patience, and the goal you desire is quite sure to be won. Also, from just beyond the boundary between the local and the infinite, you are able to see that, although it contains within itself paths winding and many, and valleys and groves from which you cannot see very far away, yet that, viewed as a whole, it is perfectly symmetrical, a true circle in fact, which, for all the seeming maze and medley within, yet as a circle, contains within itself a perfect geometrical entity. Simple in itself, considered as a unit, from the larger, wider, point of view. Perplexing when passing through its paths inside the boundary line. Also, you noted that, as you followed that curve on its outer side, you were able only to see a little portion of it at one time. Still, knowing that, from its shape, it would lead to the place you sought, you were content to follow on in faith based on reasoned conclusions, and, true enough, here you are and prove by your presence that your reasoning was, at least in the main, sound. Now, I could pursue this subject considerably further, but I will hand you over now to some of my friends who are with me here and help me in the work, and they will show you more of our home and its surroundings, and, if you wish, will be glad to accompany you farther afield, for there is much of interest to show you. Also you will be able to talk over with them the lessons I have been happy enough to be able to give you, and among you will, no doubt, have something more to tell and to ask me when we meet a little later. So he bade us goodbye, and a band of happy people came from the house, and led us within. But, as the time is up for you to go to other duties, we must cease now, with our love and assurance to you, of our delight in coming thus to commune with you, if only for this little while. God bless you, dear lad, and all our loved ones. Mother and friends.